Hello, this is a message specifically to be posted in one of the several Facebook groups that I have to be a member of because women can't talk on Twitter anymore. And specifically the two Facebook groups that I'm in, that it's women from all over the world. So basically what you're hearing is that the British TERFs have won. This is not true. We didn't win. Trans activists lost because they were caught in patterns of behaviour that they could not change. Now mostly with the trans activists we're talking about people who are protecting a false identity, so it's basically narcissism. All accusations are admissions, they try to keep you discussing their identity and go round and round in circles. You don't have to discuss what a woman is, you already know you are one. We're not discussing your identity, we're discussing whether another person has the right to redefine your identity and whether their identity has a right to impact on you. And we're discussing their behaviour. And the way that we won in the UK is actually very straightforward. We're not geniuses, we're not, anything like that. The first thing is that we used Twitter to demonstrate the problem, but we did not use Twitter to organise. We got shit on Twitter, we got defamed on Twitter, and we used Twitter to demonstrate. And we did, by having the conversation and being what these activists could not be, and having the conversation that they demanded. They have demanded a safeguarding conversation, and then they've demonstrated male pattern abusive behaviour. And then, we took it at face value. We took all their behaviour at face value. But the main thing that changed in the UK is that we met in real life, sometimes in small groups, sometimes in large groups. We had organisations who, who emerged. These were not, nobody's got any bloody money, there were meetings held all over the country, and then when activists tried to stop one group having meetings, we just started all putting on more meetings. So when Venice Allen's meetings were targeted relentlessly, that made other people put on meetings, and we used their behaviour to demonstrate. The other thing is that we remembered that we didn't have to have the battles that our mothers and grandmothers had, because they didn't have the systems that we have, the systems that trans activists wanted to undermine and get access to. And we remembered that we already had those laws, and we acted. So after WP UK meetings, we all made sure that we rang our local council and clarified the difference between sex and gender, and that we looked at their policies around sex and gender, and we made sure that they were applying the laws that we already had. We didn't need to fight for changes in the law. Trans activists are trying to fight for changes in the law. We've already got the laws. We just had to make sure the law was applied. We realised that abusive relations and normal relations cannot coexist, and we stopped trying to engage with trans activists, and we treated it like abusive behaviour, and we set boundaries. And we continued. The secret with a narcissist is to say no and then let the rage demonstrate why the no was necessary and carry on being what they can't be. Trans activists are fighting reality, for a false identity. You are the reality that makes their bullshit fall apart. You don't have to fight reality when you are reality. And the best thing that you can do is be what they can't be. There were campaigns like Man Friday to show the absurdity of this, where women dressed up, went to male-only spaces and demanded to be let in on the grounds that they were identifying as men for just Friday, just that one day a week. We had to organise offline. We held meetings, we talked to each other, we have various platforms, we use MeWe and Facebook groups and a bunch of other stuff. And the networking of Twitter is really useful, and I miss it. But we didn't rely on that, and we kept talking. Now, during this period, a few people from existing political cultures tried to throw women under a bus. You have to make sure that when elite women try to stymie what you're doing by throwing women under a bus, that you set the tone to them and you say, you don't do that, there will be no woman thrown under a bus fighting this. Now, the UK was at a weak point because we just had 8 years of austerity, and we're also at a particular point in time where we're kind of going through a much bigger crisis that this is in the context of. And we knew that we were at a weak spot. And we know that by turning the tide here, we have created a tipping point for elsewhere. And we've always been aware, like I spoke to a woman from the States yesterday who said, we can't do what you do because, there are trans activists with assault rifles. I know. I know. In England, we were probably going to get punched or hit. And, you know, they are crazy bastards. But, you know, they weren't going to shoot us, you know. But ultimately, all we really, really had to do was what most domestic abuse victims do. We just had to say, I am an adult woman in 2018. I do not exist to manage your fucking identity. My sexual boundaries are not yours to override. And actually, we did what women learned to do in the 20th century, and we looked at that behaviour and we said that behaviour is abusive behaviour. And you can Google the Duluth Wheel. Women all over the world, your grandmothers and your mothers, they emancipated themselves from violence. They managed to get it so that we can get divorced and we can live outside marriage and we can do all the things that 100 years ago were not possible. We are the first generation of women not to be owned, really. And not to, you know, we are the first and most powerful generation of women that this planet has seen in a very long time. Most of the trans stuff has been pushed through by stealth from above. And the minute it hits you, it falls apart. And the reason they're so frightened of you talking and the reason they go to so much effort to stop you talking is because that's literally all you need to do. Now, in the beginning, it was really, really scary. Like, at one point, about a year and a half ago, you couldn't even say out loud that lesbians don't have a penis. And you would be like the only person saying it. And then all of a sudden, you would say it, and because you were saying it, 5 or 6 other people would say it. And then all of a sudden, lots and lots of people. And then we carried on doing that. And the more women stood up, the less scary it gets. I'm going to a women's group on Sunday. I've got a meeting on in October. I'm going down to a thing in London on the 26th of September. Sorry, my daughter's dancing and I'm going to tell her to just stop it. Will you stop just for a second? Don't make videos with your children in the room. What I'm trying to say to you is it's been a really, really difficult couple of years because we've really had to take some shit. I was virtually made unemployable because I was targeted by a political party because I discussed safeguarding. But the laws were already ours. Our mothers and our grandmothers got them. And they were relying on us agreeing that you could identify as our representation. There was never any question that our boundaries were up for grabs. There was never any question our freedom of assembly was up for grabs. There was never any question of the meaning of lesbian changing. And all we had to do was look that in the face and say, I'm really sorry, but I do not exist to manage your fucking identity or anybody's. And when the law tries to make me, that is not okay. I swear to God, my daughter is walking towards me right now. So basically, this is a message from the UK, just to say it's possible. We've turned the tide here. We've virtually won. And that tipping point should help you stand up. And I'm going to post this in the groups that I post in, where there are lots of international women.